us now is former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, after seeming to be rattled by the whole Kamala switcheroo, Donald Trump is back out there on the stump. And the key right now, message for him seems to be tying Harris and her lighter-than-air policy agenda to the lead weight of the Biden economic record. Have a listen to what Donald Trump had to say a little while ago.
Kamala has declared that tackling inflation will be a day one priority. Think of it for her, but day one for Kamala was 3.5 years ago. Why hasn't she done it?
Mick, is this going to be the big attack line that basically Kamala Harris is just a more brat version of Biden?
Yeah, James, we don't know yet. They're still struggling at the Trump campaign to try and figure out what their message is going to be. So they're trying a bunch of different things. They're facing an interesting challenge. You know, I've talked about this on the show before, which is that most Americans, except those who follow politics very closely, don't know who the vice president is. It's not a very substantial or meaningful position outside of election day and so forth. So what Trump is figuring out is that most people don't even know she was part of the Biden team. And what they'll be trying to do is link them together. You hear a lot of the Harris Biden economy, the Harris and Biden administration, et cetera, linking those two names together. They haven't had much luck on it yet. It's still early, but that's certainly one of the messages they're going to be testing over the course of the last 80 days of the election.
Yeah, and Mick, let me ask you, too, about what seems to have been, you know, as I said before, Trump seeming kind of rattled by this whole switch. We didn't hear a lot from him. We're only now starting to see him out there punching again out on the stump. Two former White House aides, though, have claimed that Donald Trump is now, in their words, lighting up campaign staffers over where the campaign is. And it is rumored that campaign managers Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles are on the chopping block. What are you hearing?
It's not at all unusual. I'm hearing some of that, but then I'm hearing the exact opposite. In fact, Donald Trump was on TV here in this country today talking about how happy he was with Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita. Look, anytime you go from being 20 or 25 points ahead, which is what Trump was roughly a month ago, to basically tied, which is what he is tonight, you're going to take a real hard introspective look at your team. He's bringing in some old faces, some folks who helped run his campaign in 2016 and 2020, and also bringing in some new faces to maybe get a new perspective on things. They're not panicking. That's what a lot of media here is reporting it. I've talked to folks on the inside. They're not panicked, but they are concerned over the fact that what they thought was an insurmountable lead is now effectively a tied race.
Yeah, and look, there's been a lot of talk about whether or not Trump is on the right track, too, with some of these attacks about, you know, crowd sizes and so on before. We've spoken a lot about this, how Trump may be, whether or not he's taking the right approach with these attacks on Kamala's personality and, as I say, crowd sizes instead of policy issues. Here is Trump doing just this at a rally in North Carolina on Wednesday.
What happened to her laugh? I haven't heard that laugh in about a week. That's why they keep her off the stage. That's why she's disappeared. That's the laugh of a crazy person, I will tell you, if you haven't known it. She's crazy.
And Mick, here's what I thought was interesting, too. J.D. Vance hit back at any criticism of this approach.
You've been getting a little unsolicited advice, I think we can say, from some top Republicans. It's more directed at him, but still, the message is stop talking about the crowd sizes, stop talking about whether she's, about her racial background. What do you say to that?
Now, look, I think one of the things people actually love about Donald Trump in politics is he's not unwilling to speak off the cuff. He says what's actually on his mind. He's not always filtered. I think that's a good thing, and it's part of his appeal. Democrats are going to call people a lot of names. Look, the Democrats are frankly calling the American people a lot of names for believing in common sense things.
And, Mick, I mean, with this here, is this one of these cases where the campaign experts who are giving him advice about what to say and what not to say, they don't really necessarily have Trump's best interests at heart? I mean, they're not the ones who really want to see Trump win.
James, I can hear the conversation now. I've had this conversation with the president literally 100 times in the past when I would sit down and say, Mr. President, I think we should do this on the campaign, and someone else would come in and say the same thing or something similar. And he'd sit back in his chair and go, so tell me, how many campaigns have you won for president before? Zero? We're doing it my way. I mean, end of the day, he is his own campaign manager, just as he is his own chief of staff. So Donald Trump will listen to people. There's no question he'll take advice. He'll filter it through. But at the end of the day, he's going to do exactly what he wants to do and run the race he wants to run.
And Mick, Annalise Nielsen, our Sky News U.S. correspondent, reported earlier on this network that Donald Trump held a long press conference earlier today, gave a lot of really good lines. And this is by contrast to the Kamala Harris campaign, which is doing basically a rerun of the 2020 basement campaign. But even then, Joe Biden did some Zoom calls and things like this. Is the Trump campaign going to be able to cut through by actually speaking to the press, giving them things that they can report on, whereas they're not going to have anything to report on about Kamala Harris if she is, not doing events and basically avoiding the press?
Yeah, James, it's a fascinating question. Right now, Kamala Harris is essentially making the gamble that she can get through the next 80 days, which is a very short period of time for an election in this country. Keep in mind, our presidential elections are 2 years at least. This one's going to be roughly 3 months. And her gamble is, if I don't talk too much, I might be able to win. I'm sitting here, as you can tell, in a television studio in Washington, D.C. We just wrapped up coverage of this particular matter that you're talking about, the long, rambling press conference that Trump gave today. And the Democrats were all, well, good, it's the same old thing. He's not moving the needle. He's talking about the same things he's always talked about. And then the Republicans on the panel said, yeah, but at least he's taking questions. And he's raising the point that he can take questions. And Kamala Harris has not proved yet to anybody that she can take questions. You cannot run for president in this country. And more importantly, in the eyes of the voters, I don't think you can be the president if you can't stand in front of the press and answer questions for half an hour or 45 minutes. Kamala Harris has not done that yet. So say what you want to about Trump's rambling nature at his press conference and so forth. At least he's doing it, and by doing it, he's exposing her for not. And that may be another one of the angles that he's testing out here to see which one of those sorts of messages lands the most punches on the Kamala Harris campaign here in the last days of the election.
Yeah, no, I know. But as you say, it's 80 days left. Early voting starts to open in just a matter of a few weeks in some states. So it's not a lot of time to go. Hey, Mick, before I let you go, though, this absolutely knocked me over this week. It's been reported that in 2016, Hunter Biden, remember him, sought assistance from the U.S. government and the State Department to secure a lucrative energy project in Italy while his father was vice president. And this project was run by, guess who? Burisma, that Ukrainian company that, of course, we heard all those stories about. Mick, this would seem to be confirmation that the story that the White House and so much of the media called fake news for years may actually be true. Why is it suddenly safe to start to talk about this? Mick, I find it fascinating now that Joe Biden is no longer the candidate. We can suddenly talk about Hunter Biden.
So here's the chatter about that inside Washington, D.C., is that this is not the last you are going to hear about stories regarding Hunter Biden's conduct over the course of, say, the last 10 years. There's some folks suggesting that you're going to hear more and more of this. Why? So that he can plead guilty to a bunch of stuff in the next couple of months, and then his father can then pardon him on his way out of office. Keep in mind,